Here's what's coming up.
U.S. President Joe Biden and President-elect Donald Trump hold separate talks focused on finding peace in the Middle East. Voters in Somaliland, a breakaway region of Somalia, flocked to polling stations on Wednesday to select their president. And technology hubs in Africa offering mentorship, funding, access, and a collaborative environment for local talent to tackle. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54.
At this hour, U.S. President Joe Biden and President-elect Donald Trump are holding a traditional transition meeting at the White House. We're expecting to bring you pictures of their post-meeting briefing once their meeting is over. Meanwhile, Biden and Trump have both had conversations with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, focused on the conflicts in Gaza and Lebanon and hopes for the release of hostages held by Hamas. VOA White House correspondent Anita Powell reports from Washington.
The road to finding peace here goes straight through here. Washington is Israel's main supporter as it conducts operations in Gaza. On Tuesday, President Joe Biden welcomed Israeli President Isaac Herzog, ceremonial head of state, and reaffirmed his support.
You know, my commitment to Israel is ironclad, and we share a deep friendship. I want to thank you again for being here, and the floor is yours.
Herzog said,
"But first and foremost, we have to get the hostages back home."
I agree.
And it all starts in Tehran. It all starts in the Empire of Evil, where in Tehran, with its proxies, they are doing whatever they can to derail stability and security and peace, calling for the annihilation of the state of Israel and seeking nuclear weapons.
Herzog later said his conversations with Biden were open and frank. A day earlier, Herzog congratulated President-elect Donald Trump and called him a champion of peace and a great friend of Israel at a gathering of Jewish organizations in Washington. Trump has, in recent days, spoken repeatedly to Israel's top executive, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
We spoke of the urgent need to bring our hostages back home. President Trump reiterated his love for Israel. I thanked him for his friendship and wished him every success.
The U.S. State Department said Tuesday that Israel has made some progress in allowing more humanitarian aid into Gaza. And so Washington will not act on its threat to limit arms transfers.
We've seen some progress being made. We would like to see some more changes happen. We believe that had it not been for U.S. intervention, these changes may not have ever taken place.
Aid agencies say the situation is dire. Raphael Cohen, a senior political scientist at the Rand Corporation who recently returned from the Israel-Gaza border, told VOA that he saw aid packages at the main crossing, and that it appeared that Israel had increased the amount of aid from what he called a trickle in October. The whole picture, he said, may change once Trump takes office.
Well, I think Trump has made it very clear that he wants this war wrapped up by the time he got into office. That's what he's the message that he supposedly communicated to Prime Minister Netanyahu. At the same time, President Trump, I think more so than President Biden, is a little bit more inclined to take an aggressive tack, specifically vis-a-vis Iran.
Time is also of the essence. Iran is the force behind both the Gaza-based Hamas militant group and Hezbollah. In recent months, Israel has struck deeper and deeper into Lebanon, raising fears of a broader regional war. Anita Powell, VOA News, Washington.
Voters in Somaliland, a breakaway region of Somalia at the center of rising tensions in the Horn of Africa, voted Wednesday to select their president. The territory is an oasis of peace and stability in violence-racked Somalia, but has failed to win recognition from any country since declaring its independence in 1991. Hundreds of voters in the main city, Hargeisa, lined up before dawn to avoid the heat, many proudly showing off voting cards and sporting the territory's red and white flag. VOA's Philip Alexiou has more.
Hundreds of voters in the main city, Hargeisa, lining up calmly before the dawn to avoid the heat. President Muse Bihi, his main rival Abdurrahman Mohammed Abdullahi, popularly known as Iro, and third candidate Faisal Ali Warabe, all voted early at the nearby Civil Service Training Institute. Introduced this year special glasses to identify people by their iris, seen here as Bihi gives them a try. The territory is an oasis of peace and stability in violence-racked Somalia, but has failed to win recognition from any country since declaring independence in 1991. Mahmoud Mohammed Hassan, a teacher, says this election sends a message to the international community.
Somaliland is a full functioning government. It has political parties. It has currencies. It's different from Somalia. It has stability. It has everything that government needs, all the elements of the state, so that international community should support Somaliland. They should look Somaliland, because Somaliland is a stable country. It's a democratic country.
Political analyst Gulet Ahmed Chama says ideologically there's not much difference between the two main political parties.
But there are differences between the personalities of the contenders. And that's very important here in Somaliland. So one is often portrayed as a strong militaristic man, and the other as a soft diplomatic guy.
The territory has become the focus of an international dispute between Somalia and Ethiopia, raising fears of another conflict in the rest of the region. In January, Somaliland signed an agreement with landlocked Ethiopia, offering a lease on 20 kilometers of its Red Sea coastline. Bihi says Ethiopia will recognize Somaliland in return, though this has never been confirmed by Addis Ababa, and full details of the deal have not been made public. The memorandum of understanding has aroused fury in Somalia, sparking a verbal and military escalation with Ethiopia that has alarmed the international community. Philip Alexio, VOA News.
For more on Wednesday's elections in Somaliland, I'm joined live from the United Kingdom by Abdi Fatah Tahir, a research fellow at the Department of Urban Studies and Planning at the University of Sheffield. Mr. Tahir, what does holding this election, seen as peaceful and well-organized, say about the breakaway Republic of Somaliland?
Thank you very much. It adds to a list of similar elections that have held in the past. This is the fourth one. And the conduct of elections, the way in which the election is conducted, has improved since then. But generally, the same cannot be said, that kind of improvement cannot be said about the everyday governance and political landscape in the country, which is kind of polarized and dominated by, clan narratives, which is divisive in nature. So in general, it portrays Somaliland in a very, generous and development-oriented or democracy-oriented entity. But these are the problems and the challenges it needs to overcome.
But a lot of people will say that Somaliland has been relatively stable, more than Somalia itself and some of the neighboring countries. And why would global organizations like the United Nations, for example, the African Union, and other powerful nations fail to recognize Somaliland as an independent nation, given that it has been stable for more than 3 decades now, if you compare that to what we see even in Somalia itself?
Yes, that's the case. Somaliland has performed quite well compared to the neighboring countries, including Ethiopia and Djibouti. But the problem is the United Nations by itself is not an organization that has the authority, to grant an international recognition by itself. It relies on the member states, willingness to do so. And it seems that Somaliland has not successfully convinced these member states, including the powerful ones, the US and the European, members, to recognize it. And I don't think whether it's offering anything that kind of strategically aligns with their interests in the region, both economically and security-wise. And the AU, of course, is always the elephant in the room. It's difficult to get a recognition for an African country without first convincing the African Union, which is the overarching body for the continent on matters on international recognition.
And very quickly, Tahir, how does that lack of national recognition, that impact Somaliland's ability to participate in global forums?
It impacts Somaliland in very significant ways. For instance, if you look at Somalilanders have their own passport, but that passport is not internationally recognized by most countries in the world. So it needs the Somali passports, and most people travel to Mogadishu to get that passport. Another area is the country code. For instance, Somaliland still uses the country code of Somalia. So Somalia has a significant control over these communication systems. The third one is the airspace as well. Somalia has an airspace, and that airspace is controlled from Mogadishu. And perhaps maybe the last one, it also significantly influences the aid distribution, because most of the countries that are giving aid to Somalia recognize the authorities in Mogadishu as the de jure authority in the country, and they deal with it. So it has some influences in who to give aid and assistance.
Abdi Fatah, thank you very much for your insight. Abdi Fatah Tahir is a research fellow at the Department of Urban Studies and Planning at the University of Sheffield in the United Kingdom. Lofty speeches and pledges of cooperation are being heard at the UN annual climate talks in Azerbaijan amid the backdrop of sweeping political change, economic troubles, and global wars. At COP29 in Baku, world leaders are looking at striking a deal on spending billions of dollars to help poor countries reduce and adapt to climate change. Carlo Bontempo, director of Kapanche, the European Climate Change Service, tells VOA's Carol Van Dam the goal remains the same as the first conference 30 years ago in Berlin: increase in international ambition to reduce global warming below 1.5 Celsius to avoid catastrophic harm to the planet.
Well, in a sense, I think the language of the alarm bell has been used for decades now. So if we want to use the same metaphor, then I would say that we have been ringing this bell for a very long time, and with very little effect. Going back to the science, I guess it's important to say that some of these extremes, especially the heat waves, we have seen a lot of occurrences of those lately, or hydrological extreme. I mean, the one of Valencia, and the Prime Minister of Spain referred to it in his speech at COP today, I believe, is fresh in our minds. But not only that, if you look even just in Europe over the last few months, we had flooding in Italy, in Czechia, in Poland, and last year in Greece and Libya, and so on. These kind of events that are often linked to a very intense precipitation, very intense rainfall in a short amount of time. Well, these kind of events are increasing in intensity because of climate change. The science is quite clear on that, and actually the science behind is probably a century and a half old. So it's quite strong, that link. And if we want to base our decisions on evidence, then I think there is something to be alarmed, because these are likely to go worst from now on with the increasing temperature globally.
Are world leaders listening, and other people at COP29 that are making these decisions and commitments? Are they listening to the people that know?
Well, in a sense, I would a way of answering this question is to look at the number of this COP29, right? Had people taken action before, maybe we wouldn't have needed a COP29. So it's not a matter of listening. I think people are listening. The problem is very complex and requires a complex multilateral solution, and this is very difficult to achieve. And my wish, my hope, is the fact that this discussion can be based on facts, not on opinions. We can all have our opinions, but the facts are facts. But it's not a matter of not listening. It's a matter of not putting enough priority to this discussion and not basing it on the evidence that exists.
That was Carlo Bontempo, Director of Copernicus, the European Climate Change Service, speaking with VOA's Carol Van Dam from Bonn, Germany. U.S. President Joe Biden has just finished meeting with President-elect Donald Trump at the White House. Let's listen in to their post-meeting briefing.
Transition, do everything we can to make sure you're accommodated, what you need, and we're going to get a chance to talk about some of that today. So
good.
Welcome
Thank you
back.
very much, and thank you very much. And politics is tough, and it's many cases, not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much. A transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that, Jim.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
That was U.S. President Joe Biden meeting with President-elect Donald Trump moments ago at the White House. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, technology hubs in Africa offer collaborative environment for local talent. We'll be right back.
On the next Straight Talk Africa, President-elect Donald Trump is staffing his administration. Thousands of positions have to be filled for his second term in office, which begins January 20th, 2025, after he is sworn in. The appointees with unquestionable loyalty to Trump will mirror the direction his administration will take on domestic and foreign policy. Join me, Vincent McCory, for an in-depth look into the Trump presidential transition and how that might affect U.S. Africa policy.
You're watching Africa 54 from the Voice of America headquarters here in Washington, D.C. In other news, the United Nations is renewing its appeal for an immediate ceasefire in Sudan, with officials warning that civilians are paying a high price for the fighting as external parties fuel the conflict by supplying weapons. The UN political chief, Rosemary DiCarlo, says the only path out of the fighting is a negotiated political solution. Unrelenting high prices and a brutal insurgency is making it hard for Nigerians in northeastern Borno State to feed their families. When a dam collapsed in September, flooding the state capital and surrounding farmland, many people ran out of options. Now the hungry queue for handouts in camps for those displaced by fighting between extremist Boko Haram rebels and the military. And the U.S. is sanctioning Abdelrahman Jomar Barakala, a commander with Sudan's paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. He is accused of overseeing human rights abuses in his country's West Darfur region and being a primary party responsible for the ongoing violence against civilians in Sudan. Experts say small modular reactors called SMRs are bringing affordable nuclear energy to less wealthy countries. But what are SMRs and why are the proponents so excited about them? Henry Wilkins explains.
This Vienna conference in late October is the first one held by the UN nuclear watchdog that focuses on small nuclear reactors known as SMRs. Rafael Mariano Grossi, the director of the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, says less developed countries have signed deals to build the SMRs that will give them nuclear power for the first time.
The small and modular reactors, one of the most promising, exciting, and necessary technological developments that we have had coming for quite a long time, but that we know now that is going to be a reality.
This year, Ghana and South Africa signed deals with firms to build their first SMRs. Others are already operating in China and Russia, and others are set to be built in Argentina, Canada, Britain, and the United States. But what are SMRs and how can they help the less wealthy countries access nuclear power? SMRs are miniature nuclear power plants with an electricity output about 1/3 that of regular nuclear plants. They're cheaper because of their smaller size and because they're factory built. They require less upfront investment, making it more affordable for smaller economies to get nuclear power. Modular parts make the small reactors easier to alter and upgrade and less expensive to maintain. Experts say because of these things, SMRs have the potential to transform economies.
We need instant solution to address the energy security. As you know, that energy is the center of the economy. So this energy scarcity or the energy challenges that are faced in Africa, it kills our economy.
But critics argue that countries should focus on renewable energies such as wind and solar, which don't carry the environmental risk of nuclear power and don't produce radioactive waste. Ed Lyman, Director of Nuclear Safety at the Union of Concerned Scientists, warns SMRs don't benefit from the same economies of scale as larger nuclear power plants. He says his analysis of one company's SMR shows customers can end up paying 5 times more when compared to larger plants for the electricity they produce. Because of the higher generation costs, he says, operators might have to limit expenses and run a higher safety risk.
There's just too much pressure to cut costs in other ways, for instance, by reducing the number of operators.
Lyman also said a strong independent national regulator is essential for avoiding nuclear incidents and that it's not always clear how SMR deals will be financed. Henry Wilkins, VOA News.
Tech hubs in Africa are vital to the continent's technology ecosystem, fostering innovation and entrepreneurship. They offer mentorship, funding, access, and a collaborative environment for local talent to tackle specific challenges. These hubs support skill development by providing resources and networking opportunities, contributing to economic growth and social progress. Africa 54's Paul Ndiho spoke with Kenneth Twesige, CEO of Tech Buzz Hub Uganda, about how Ugandans are leveraging new technologies.
As an entrepreneur, for starters, you start almost your company with less manpower. And because of that less manpower, you end up having or amassing a lot of experience. And based on that experience, you start identifying certain areas you're very good at. As we all know that Uganda is almost the second country in the world with the highest number of young people. And in a country that has so much young people, it means that there is so much pressure on government, pressure on the people themselves. So when technology comes into play, every young person is looking forward to how can I take advantage of technology to be able to find my living. Yeah, so young people are leveraging technology, are leveraging not just technology, but also deep technology, by the way. The young people are getting to learn what AI can do, how they can utilize it. Of course, some of the challenges we get to have is when the education system is not aligning very well with the current trends of technology. But again, young people are trying and doing their best to at least upskill and empower themselves with technology.
You talked about AI, you talked about other tools that young people are trying to use. How important is it for these young people to learn these skills?
Technology is driving or is actually influencing every sector, every way of life in general. So it is very important for every young person to pay attention to how they can actually not be left behind. So you'll find that at least for those that have gotten an opportunity of exposure or speaking to someone who is a little bit on a certain level and understands how technology is going to be relevant in the next, or is even already relevant for any young person coming out of university or even tertiary institution. So for those few who get that opportunity, I think they are taking it up. And that is why even our kind of work or companies in Uganda that are called innovation hubs, over the past 5 years, we have gained traction, not only from the youth, but also development partners who are interested in working with the youth and government and even civil societies.
I don't know if you remember this, but the first time I met you, you were still a student at university, and you told me that one of your goals was to become a technopreneur, somebody who creates a company in this space and take it places. I'm curious to know, what have you done with Tech Buzz?
Over the last 8 years, Tech Buzz Hub has been running. In fact, prior to Tech Buzz Hub, the time you met me, I was building 2 companies at the time. Okay, two tech solutions. One of them was a security solution, and the other one was an information sharing solution. Yeah, but at a certain point, I noticed that scalability was going to be one of the challenges I was going to have. And yet, I needed not only to build my own tech solutions, but also facilitate or support other young people to be able to build their solutions. So from there, I had built up a project, which is Tech Buzz Hub today, which got some funding from Nigeria by a philanthropist called Tony Erumeru. Certainly you have heard about that program.
Yes.
And that was evidence enough for me to prove that this is a solution that will transform young people in Uganda. But for the last 8 years, we have basically been running it more like a pilot, testing several things, and we are at a stage where we are actually focusing on growth and scale. Maybe that is also why today we are recognized as the best co-working space in Africa, best co-working space globally.
That was Kenneth Twesige, CEO of Tech Buzz Hub in Uganda, speaking to VOA's Paul Ndiho. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thank you for watching.